philanthropist Miriam Adelson. Andy, you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, this will be followed by the completion of the Sefer Torah in my father's memory, and we're going to ask Secretary Pompeo to write a letter with Sofer, Rabbi Raskin.
Shalom, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom, friends and fellow supporters of the State of Israel and of this great United States. Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Remembrance Day and Independence Day, follow one another in a difficult transition. From sorrow to celebration, from reflection on the past to hope for the future, from somber stories of war to sweet dreams of peace. Our honored guest today, Mike Pompeo, may not be Israeli, but he certainly understands the Israeli experience encapsulated in these two national days. In fact, he helped craft that experience. As a distinguished U.S. Army soldier, as director of CIA, and as Secretary of the State, Mike worked tirelessly to help Israel vanquish its enemies and make new friends. He was key to the Abraham Accords, to countering Iran's malicious actions, to setting the historical record straight about Israel's right to the ancient Jewish homeland. He is an officer and gentleman, but he is also a fighter for the truth. Like the biblical angel after whom he is named, Mike, Michael is a defender of Israel. My beloved late husband, Sheldon, held him in high regard, as do I. Ladies and gentlemen, in honoring Mike Pompeo today, it is we who are honored. There is no doubt that Mike will keep going from strength to strength. Thank you, and Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach.
Miriam's not here, but I will get a chance to thank her in a moment. Yeah, here we go. Rabbi Shmuley. Yeah, good. Perfect. Rabbi Shmuley, thank you so much for hosting this very special event. It is an honor for me to be here. It was, as I was watching that Israeli flag and that American flag, I was thinking, and listening to the Haktiva, I was thinking about the beautiful rendition of Haktiva that I heard given in Abu Dhabi and then in Bahrain. Truly amazing. Did we think this would happen on our watch? And yet the Lord watched over us all, and peace has broken out in these special places. We now have two more nations that honor Israel's right to be the Jewish state, for the Jewish people to have their rightful homeland on that special place in Israel and in Judea and Samaria. This is special to be here to commemorate Memorial Day. I'm an evangelical Christian, and so to be here to celebrate Israel's Memorial Day is something that's very special to one who has read the Bible and knows the history of so many brave Israeli soldiers who gave their lives, who indeed gave their all to ensure that Israel would be strong and sovereign and independent. Each of you, by being here today, honors them deeply. I had a chance to work alongside so many great soldiers in the IDF. And then I had this incredible privilege in my last trip to Israel as a Secretary of State. I had this incredible privilege to go to the Golan Heights and be with the general who commanded the soldiers there, who led them in that difficult time in the Valley of Tears, where these men knew that the chances for survival were slim and the risk to them enormous, but the risk to the Jewish homeland so great And it was a place, too, where the United States and Israel came together. The United States provided important support, and they made a stand there, a stand that allows Israel to be where it is today and to continue to exist in the same way that it does today. These are the soldiers. These are the great members of the Israeli Armed Forces who we honor here today, who gave so much for this important experiment in Israel. The nation, the freedom of its people, its national sovereignty continue to depend on people of character, people willing to take risks, people who understand the prophetic nature of this historic place and of the Jewish people. I was an armor officer an awfully long time ago in the United States Army. I know the sacrifices that these young men and women take to serve, and I wanted to be here today to honor them for their continued service. I spoke about two other courageous people. Rabbi Shmuley mentioned them, but we sometimes forget this important moment in history. The United States and Israel, two experiments in democracy that are unrivaled anywhere in the world. Ours now some 240 plus years old, and yours tomorrow now 73 years old. There were these two courageous people. Back in 1948, David Ben-Gurion, who read aloud the final text of a Declaration of Independence, Israel's Declaration of Independence, at a museum in Tel Aviv. For those of you who are young people here and don't remember, the tensions that day were running incredibly high. This was not without enormous risk. British rule in Palestine was going to end that very evening at midnight, and Arab states had indicated not only their willingness, but had demonstrated their capacity to invade. There was no electricity in Jerusalem, so few of the citizens there in Jerusalem could hear Ben-Gurion's words. But halfway across the world here in America, we were listening and we responded. We formally recognized Israel's new government. In 11 minutes, our President Harry Truman made what was for him a moral right decision, not without risk. Two great leaders that are recognized when we think about the history of democracies and independence movements around the world. And even though bombs were being dropped in Israel and survival of the new state was far from certain, I think people in each of our two countries knew that this relationship was important and that history would reflect well on those who supported the enormously deep relationship between these two countries. I think about the two declarations of independence, each different documents, to be sure, but they share some self-evident propositions. In America's case, it was the self-evident right of all men to be created equal. And in Israel's case, it is what the Hebrew prophets handed down, the right of the Jewish people to be masters of their own fate in their own homeland. Both documents created by citizens who knew that their words would time and time again be required to back up with real deeds, with military strength, and who knew that freedom requires incredibly strong defense, and each nation prepared to do that, to commit to that. And so today, the opportunity to be here with you all in the memory of all those who have fought for Israeli independence is so special. I had the incredible privilege these past 4 years, first leading America's Central Intelligence Agency and then serving as America's most senior diplomat, to work and build on the relationship between these two great experiments. And whether it was the Abraham Accords or our work to enforce the Taylor Act, denying money to fraudulent martyrs from the Palestinian Authority, the movement of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and the rights related to settlements and the Golan Heights, I think back to the discussions inside the administration, and I know that we did these because they were the right thing to do. They were the honest thing to do. And while we had wished many of things might well have happened earlier, we were proud to be part of these transformative actions that President Trump so courageously undertook. We did them for no political purpose. We did them for no secondary utilitarian end. We did them because they were right and moral and consistent with America's understanding of the world. And we do this because it was the interest of both of our peoples. Today, too, in Israel, the victims of terror are being honored. Israel's duty to defend its people is unassailable and should always be supported by America. The world's foremost sponsor of terror, the Islamic Republic of Iran, today is in Vienna, meeting with the E3 and indirectly with the United States. I hope that each of the leaders in that room today and this week acknowledge that the regime is in fact evil. It is anti-Semitic. Indeed, it speaks of its genocidal intent while denying the Holocaust. America, who is the noblest force for good and for human rights in the world, cannot permit the return to a situation where the risk to the Jewish homeland is real and the capacity for Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon is real. I pray that we will move forward on a path which is decent and righteous and moral, and make sure that we always and forever defend those democracies in this world who are prepared to stand up for their own rights. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Miriam again for her remarks. You know, I got to know Sheldon on what was my second or third trip to Israel, my first as a member of government. I was a young member of Congress at the time. I watched Sheldon, who shared my time in service, when he too served in the United States Army. And I watched Sheldon provide a singular bridge between these two great democracies. And I was regaled and have been regaled by stories from team members who continued to get their wages even after the hotels which Sheldon owned were closed. They benefited from his philanthropic efforts, as have so many who have suffered from illness. The contributions he made to the medical community were enormous. He of course built an amazing business and shared greatly in its prosperity. But just as importantly, he built an understanding of the world, and he shared this vision with many of us in Congress. Those who had the privilege to know Sheldon and his wonderfully loving wife Miriam all have stories. My story is when I met him on that trip in 2011. I told Sheldon that as a brand new member of Congress who was an armor officer, I felt a special kinship to this piece of real estate, this very special, biblical, historic place. He told me of the great tank battles, and we talked about the fact that the work that our two nations could do together to defend each other was prophetic and important and to be continued. I now have been to Israel many, many times. On my last trip, I had the privilege to travel to Judea and Samaria, and it was a trip that oddly seemed controversial to many. I thought it was right, the right thing to do. I had on that trip also a chance to travel to the old city of David. And it confirmed for me what Sheldon had implored me to take on board, that the Jewish values and the nobility of Israel's place in the world are to be revered. And I watched Sheldon, and I've watched so many of you live those values as well. I hope that the Lord will bless Miriam and all the members of their family, and that we will remember him and the work that he did. And I trust, thank you, and I trust that on this most special day, where we take a moment to pray and to commemorate those who understood the values and vision that we all share, the values and vision of the democratic people of Israel, the Jewish homeland, the democracy they bring to Arabs and Jews and people of all faiths who live there, Christians as well, of course. I trust that we will remember that their work was important, that it continues to be valued, and that it will provide for us a joy, a commitment to continuing to build this important relationship and to secure these two amazing places. May the Lord bless each and every one of you, and may you celebrate tomorrow a very happy 73rd Independence Day. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you all.
I think the secretary is slightly taller than I am. But good things come in small packages. Ladies and gentlemen, in commemorating the life and legacy of Sheldon Adelson, the Jewish mega philanthropist, and I thank Miriam for that beautiful introduction of Secretary Pompeo, which encapsulates the Jewish community's love for the Secretary. And in remembering the life of my father, who passed away almost a year ago, and we Jews commemorate 11 months of mourning, we are now writing a Torah scroll. This is Judaism's highest honor. There is no bigger mitzvah than to have a letter in a Torah scroll. As an organization, we've only done this twice before. We did it for the memory of Elie Wiesel, when the last letter that was written was by my very dear friend, the Jewish philanthropist and activist Elisha Wiesel, who's here with us today. Elie Wiesel's only child, and I have to say that one of the greatest honors of my life is when I traveled with Elisha and his son Elijah and my son David Chaim to Sighet last year for the 75th anniversary commemorating the deportation of Elie Wiesel from Romania. I wanted to ask Elisha, if you would be so kind, in commemorating the fallen heroes of the IDF, to say the Kel Molei Rachamim before we finish the last letters of the Sefer Torah scroll. Elisha, will you do that for us? And I should say that Elisha served in the IDF for a few months, right? Can someone get Elisha the Kel Molei Rachamim? Elisha, you've always been able to find everything online. Elisha was the chief information officer for Goldman Sachs for many years. So, Mendy, can we get him the Kel Molei Rachamim? I also, while Elisha comes up here, I want to recognize Yitz. Thank you for coming all the way from Napa Valley, the world's foremost expert on kosher wine, who gave me a Passover to remember. We're going to have you all come and do a letter, and the secretary is going to do a letter. But we're going to ask Elisha to please do Kel Molei Rachamim. What do you do? Do we have it? You want to do it from there? Oh, wait, we need to give you a microphone. What? Elisha, you want to do it? You want to come in and use the microphone? Do you have it, friend?
Kel Molei Rachamim Shochen B'Maromim. Kel Molei Rachamim Shochen B'Maromim. Hamitzei Menucha Nechona B'Chanfei Hashchina B'Malos Kedoshim U'Tehorim Kizor Akia Mazirim Et Nishmas Chayalei Tzahagana Yisrael ומשמרי הביטחון שהלך לעולמם בעבור שנדו צדקה ורזכרס נשמתם בגן עדן די מנוחסם לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בספר כנפיו לעולמים ויצור בצור החיים את נשמתם אדוני ונחלתם וינוחתם על משכבתם בשלום ונאמר Amen.
Thank you, Elisha. Ladies and gentlemen, the secretary has a heart out in about 20 minutes. So we're going to do the letters with Rabbi Raskin, the sofer of the Torah. We are going to complete this Torah. It is a 15-centimeter Torah. It's only this big. We built it. It took 11 months to write this Torah. We wrote it so that it's transportable, so that it can be used everywhere. Rabbi Raskin, first and foremost, we want to have you write a letter with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. If everyone wants to come closer, you're very welcome to do so. Just keep social distancing, put on your mask. If you're vaccinated, that's a great thing. Everybody get the vaccine, it's a miracle.